Hi, my name is Melanie Weaver. I'm the Director of Financial Aid at Ohio Northern University, and I appreciate you joining me for this information about filing the FAFSA and planning for college. Within our presentation today, we'll talk about filing the FAFSA, what that means, the calculation that comes from the FAFSA called the Student Aid Index, information about cost of attendance and how you can plan for that, what it means to have financial need, some types of financial aid that are available for students, and what to do if you have special circumstances related to filing the FAFSA. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. It's a form that was created by our Department of Education at the federal government in order to determine a student and their family's abilities to pay for college. So it's going to collect information from you about your demographics and your financial information in order to make this determination. The FAFSA is something that you file online at fafsa.gov. And this year, the FAFSA is opening later than normal. If you're someone who's filed the FAFSA before, you may remember that the FAFSA typically opens each October 1st. But this year, 2023, the FAFSA is not opening until sometime in December. We actually don't have an exact date yet, but we anticipate that the FAFSA will open later in December rather than earlier in the month. But you should know that in future years, the FAFSA will go back to opening on October 1st. So this is just a unique one-year time period related to some changes that are coming with FAFSA that we'll discuss. The FAFSA uses what's called a prior tax year information. So it will ask questions of you about your 2022 financial information. So your tax information and your finances from 2022. So keep that in mind as you're getting ready to complete the form. The FAFSA allows students to list up to 20 colleges and universities to receive their FAFSA information. You'll want to be sure to list any schools that you want to receive this FAFSA information so that we can create a financial aid offer for you. Please keep in mind some schools have FAFSA filing deadlines or maybe a priority deadline, so it's helpful if you know those for the schools that you're considering and make sure you get that FAFSA submitted in time for the school's filing deadline. Also, I mentioned future years, but please remember that you do have to complete a renewal application each year if you want to keep receiving federal aid. Some colleges and universities may also require that you do this, so keep this in mind as you're completing the FAFSA. It's something that has to be completed annually throughout your college degree program. The first step in filing the FAFSA is to obtain a federal student aid ID. Now, students, you need to get an FSA ID for yourself, and any parent who's applying with you will also need to create an FSA ID. Parents, if you are in school yourself or have federal loans and have created an FSA ID, that will be the ID you use for this process. If you do not have an existing FSA ID, then you will need to create one. Again, everybody can create one online at studentaid.gov, and you do want to create these IDs before you get started on the FAFSA. So I do recommend that students and parents go out and create these FSA IDs throughout this fall into December before you get ready to start the FAFSA process. Again, this ID is your electronic signature. It's connected to your Social Security number and your birth date. So it says that it recognizes that you are who you say you are, and you use this to sign your FAFSA. Keep in mind as you're creating these IDs, as students and as parents, you all need to use your own email address and your own cell phone number. And students, we recommend that you do not use a high school email address. Most of the time, those expire with you when you graduate, so you want to use an email address that you'll have access to over time, such as a Gmail account or something similar. The FSA ID process also now requires what's called two-factor authentication. You may be very familiar with this in your personal life and other accounts, but they will ask you to submit a code each time you go to log in through a text or an email that you'll receive. And again, remember that this FSA ID is something that you're going to use throughout years in filing the FAFSA each year or in applying for student loans and student loan repayment. This ID will be used again and again. So once you're ready to start the FAFSA and the FAFSA is live, again, we expect that to be late December, either the student or a parent can start the FAFSA. You'll have a screen that looks somewhat like this, and you'll be able to choose if you are the student starting the FAFSA or if you are a parent that's going to begin the process. The FAFSA collects a lot of different data from the student and parents, so it will ask a lot of information, or less than it has in the past, but it will ask information about student demographics, such as basics like your address, birth date, all of those things. Students will ask if you had any income in 2022 and what that looked like. I will also ask about any savings accounts you might have. For parents, it will ask you some demographic information as well as information about who's in your household that you're supporting. It will ask you about your income from 2022, your assets, and don't forget it will ask which schools you want to receive this information. This year is a little different, so if you filed in the past, keep in mind this process is changing, but the FAFSA has transitioned to a process where once you log into the FAFSA, it will ask you to give consent to link to your IRS information. This is not an optional process any longer. They have put all of the security measures in place to link your FAFSA to the IRS information for yourself without any extra steps. Again, you have to give consent. If you do not give consent, we cannot award any federal aid. So I do recommend if you're planning on filing the FAFSA to receive aid that you give that consent that is required. The system will confirm that there's tax information available on file for you, and it will pull it all into your FAFSA. So rather than a previous process where you had the option to consent, this will require both students and parents' consent in order to bring income information over. Students, if you start the process, then you will invite your parents to contribute to your FAFSA. Now, the contributor is a term that you're going to see used often. It's for anyone who's providing information for you on the FAFSA. You will have the opportunity to enter your parent information so that they get an email. You can maybe see this in the screenshots on the screen, but you'll enter your parent information and then it will send them communication about how they can be a contributor and add their information to your FAFSA. Let's talk a little bit about who a parent is on the FAFSA. This is often a question that comes up, especially for students who may have parents in multiple households where there's not one single household for the student. So students, if your parents are married, then they both will list their information on the FAFSA together. If your biological parents are not married, but they are living together, again, both will list their information. But if your parents do not live together, they're separated or divorced, you are going to report information for the parent who provides the greater amount of support for you. And if that parent's remarried, then your step-parent's information will also be included. So the FAFSA is looking for information about a household that supports the student. That means the student's parent, and if they're remarried, will be listed on the FAFSA. And I do want to reiterate that when I talk about parents are married or parents that are not married but live together, any of these situations, we're talking about students' biological parents. So a legal guardian would not apply in this situation, or a grandparent or another. Those are unique situations that might cause a student to be independent. This is for dependent students who do live with one or both of their biological parents. The FAFSA will ask information about household size. This is to get an understanding about how many people are in the household that you're answering financial information for and who's being supported. The FAFSA will automatically pull the amount of individuals that were claimed on the 2022 tax return into the FAFSA. But you do have the option to correct this if you know that your individual's claim for 2022 is not correct for your family. Sometimes this happens, especially if maybe there's a separated situation and one parent's claiming a student one year and one the next. Your household may not be accurate in terms of using that claim amount on the tax return, so you will want to update this within FAFSA to make sure it's accurate. So what assets will you include? There are about 4 asset questions on the FAFSA, and there's a screenshot of them here. Hopefully you can see that. The top one is the annual child support received. So if a parent is filling out the FAFSA and has received child support, that would be listed here. The next question asks parents. Students, you will also have a similar question about the value of your cash savings and checking. So you'll report the value of it on the day that you file the FAFSA. In the third question, it's asking about net worth of any family farm or small business. And this is a change from last year, so keep this in mind if you've previously filed. Any small family small business or family farm would need to be included in here with the asset of that farm or business. And just keep in mind that you are reporting net worth, which is the value of your business or your farm minus any debts that are owed against the business or farm. So you'll list the net worth of that farm or business in the third box. And then in the fourth box are any other assets that you have that are available to help for college. So those are things like stocks, bonds, and CDs. If you have 529 plans, you'll report that for the student that you're filling the FAFSA out for. If you have any rental properties, vacation homes. A couple things to note though, do not include the value of the home that you live in, and do not include the value of your retirement accounts. Neither of those are available or used for this calculation about paying for college. Let's talk a little bit about what happens after you file the FAFSA. So I talked a lot about the data elements that you'll submit. You'll make sure to list the colleges and universities that you want to receive your information, and then you'll submit your FAFSA form. Now, you will receive an email notice about a FAFSA submission summary that will be ready for you to view. And this FAFSA submission summary, which will probably be shortened to FSS, is a summary of everything that you've listed on the FAFSA. So I do encourage you to go out, students and parents, to go out and look at this submission summary and make sure everything looks accurate. The good news is that you can make corrections if you find an error, and it happens. We all input things correctly, or we thought we scrolled through and we didn't. So make sure everything looks correct. If it doesn't, you can choose to make a correction. Otherwise, know that the information on your FAFSA submission summary is being sent to the schools that you listed on your FAFSA to receive the information. We typically get it about a week after your FAFSA is submitted, and we will start working with that data sometime after that point. Each college and university works a little differently with the FAFSA data in terms of timing and when we start with that information. So you will want to reach out to your college office to find out when they will start working with the data and creating a full financial aid offer. We may also ask you for additional information once we get those FAFSA results. So students, I highly encourage you to stay tuned to if there's a portal the school's given you to watch, or maybe an email address you used when you filled out your admissions application. Watch those channels for any communication about additional documents that we need from you. When you file the FAFSA, there is a complex federal formula that will use your FAFSA information to calculate a student aid index, also known as an SAI. Now, the student aid index is an evaluation of what level of financial resources your family has that can go towards your college expenses for the next year. This SAI is based specifically on you, students, and your family, but it is a number that is the same at all institutions. So your family expectation to contribute does not change from one school to the next. Again, it's a benchmark number. So it helps the federal government as well as state and schools to understand what kind of resources your family has to pay for college. And the SAI is made up of two components. So it will have a portion that's parent contribution, and students, if you happen to have income or maybe a savings account, a small portion of it may be from your contribution. And we use this at the college and universities. We use this SAI number to award financial aid to you. I do want to note, if you're a family, when you're filing the FAFSA and 2022 is no longer an accurate representation year for your family, I do highly encourage you to reach out to the financial aid offices at any schools that you have applied to, been accepted, and are seriously considering. There is a process called special circumstances that you can share information with the school about updates on your income or your family situation that might impact the information that you put on FAFSA, where we as a school can go in and update your FAFSA information. So things could be if you changed employment, maybe your 2022 information on your taxes is no longer accurate because you've changed jobs, lost a job, maybe there's been a change in marital status, or other kinds of expense items or changes. These are times where you should reach out to the financial aid office of the school you're considering and ask them if there's a consideration or if there's additional paperwork you can submit to recalculate this. Let's talk a little bit about the cost of college. So the cost of attendance is a broad term that we use to cover all possible costs that relate to your attendance at college and university for the year. And we break cost of attendance down into two sections. There are costs that we call direct costs. These are things that we're charging to you from the college or university. So typically it's tuition, probably fees, maybe a dorm room and a meal plan if you're living on campus. There are also costs that are often indirect. So these are things like transportation costs to get to and from school, other kinds of personal expenses, maybe books and supplies if the school's not providing those directly, and other kinds of miscellaneous expenses that you might incur as a result of attending college. And this cost of attendance, as you might have started to understand, varies widely based on the kind of institution that you're looking at, and the direct costs may vary as well as indirect based off if you're going to live on campus, commute from home, those kinds of things. I mentioned at the beginning that we would talk about how we calculate financial need. So what we do is we take our total cost of attendance. Every school has a total cost of attendance. So we've looked at all of the possible expenses a student could incur in attending our institution. And from that, we subtract that student aid index from you filing the FAFSA. That's the amount of resources your family may be able to contribute to school for the next year. So of our costs, we subtract the student aid index, and then we subtract any other assistance you've already been offered, such as academic scholarships, grants, that sort of thing. If whatever's left is called your need-based eligibility. So if you have financial need, it means that there's a positive number left in this calculation that says of our total cost between your portion and any outside assistance or other assistance like scholarships you've received so far, you still need help in paying for the cost of attendance. And some financial aid is based off this need calculation. Let's talk a little bit about the different types of financial aid that are available to you. Scholarships and grants are a couple of sources that you're probably very familiar with. They're what we call gift aid, and that these typically don't have to be repaid. They're money that helps you reduce the cost of college. There are also loans and student employment opportunities as well, though, that are considered financial aid, but it's called self-help aid, and that you have to work or borrow or repay in order to use this kind of financial aid. So it's not gift aid, and that it must be repaid or earned in some way. And there are a variety of sources for all of these types of funds. Again, I'd say scholarships are probably something that families are most familiar with. This is money that usually doesn't have to be repaid, and there's something that you've earned based on a variety of characteristics. Maybe it's academics, talent, athletics, that sort of thing. You can receive these from a variety of sources, so be sure to check your high school guidance office to see if there's any local scholarships you can apply for. Check with the colleges and universities that you're applying at to see what their scholarship process looks like. Do you have to submit a separate application? Do they have any other funds that you can apply for? And there's also online web searches and websites that are available too to look for scholarships on a national level. So these are all opportunities to earn scholarships to help pay for college. Grants are a second type of financial aid. These are like scholarships, and again, that the money doesn't have to be repaid, but typically grants look at that need calculation I talked to you about just a few minutes ago. So do you demonstrate that you still need help paying for the total cost of attendance at the university that you're considering? In addition, the federal and state governments also have grant opportunities they offer to students. And I'm going to, next slide, what those opportunities look like. There's the federal Pell Grant, which is perhaps the most common and well-known grant program that exists. It's meant for students who have a very high financial need. In other words, they have a low SAI. Their family is not able to contribute a lot towards their cost of education. The Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant is another federal grant that is often awarded to students who qualify for the Pell Grant. And the Ohio College Opportunity Grant is the state of Ohio's grant program for students who are Ohio residents and attending a school in Ohio. And it's meant for students who have a very low SAI and need help going to school. The Teach Grant is the one exception to all of these other grants listed here. The Teach Grant is a federal grant program intended for students who want to become teachers, and they're going to teach in a high-need field in a low-income school district after graduation. There are some more parameters attached to this, and it's a bit of a different grant because if you don't fulfill the requirements to teach, it does turn into a loan. So I mentioned this to say that if you're interested in education, this can be a great opportunity, but a lot of schools will not automatically include this financial aid from the Teach Grant in your financial aid offer. They will want you to call and talk to them about the opportunity. Again, we want to make sure that you understand that the grant does require employment to satisfy and not turn into a loan. Loans are one form of financial aid that students and parents can use to help pay for college. Certainly, loans are something you should only borrow if you need to, but typically student loans are mostly repaid after graduation, so they're intended for a student who doesn't have the resources to pay them back now, but will once they graduate and have that job. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some student loan options. Any student filing the FAFSA will automatically qualify as a freshman to borrow up to $5,500 from the federal government in the direct loan program. If the student qualifies for financial need or has financial need based on that calculation I showed you a little bit ago with the total cost of attendance minus the student aid index, minus any scholarships and grants already received, then the student can qualify for up to $3,500 of that $5,500 to be subsidized. So if a student has financial need, they can receive a portion of the $5,500, so up to $3,500, that does not have any interest accruing on it while the student's in school. And you can see here that these amounts increase a little bit as students progress from a sophomore to a junior and a senior and so on. Talking a little bit more about these loan programs. So I mentioned the subsidized loan is something that does not have interest accruing on it while the student's in school, and it's based off that need calculation that we talked about. Students that do not have financial need will still qualify for the $5,500, but they will qualify for all of their funds in an unsubsidized loan. Even students that have need will still see a portion of their loan offered in an unsubsidized form. The college or universities you're looking at will make all of these determinations for you based off the rules we have to follow. So when you receive the financial aid offer from us, it will show whether you qualify for subsidized and or unsubsidized loans. And they will indicate to you what you need to do in order to go ahead and use that loan if it's something you want to do. There are usually steps that you have to take. Now, because it's a federal student loan, and because it's limited, it's one that's in the student's name only. There's no cosigner required, and students begin repayment on this loan 6 months after they either stop school or graduate from school. The Parent Plus loan and private student loans are two other different loan options that exist for covering that remaining balance on the account. Certainly, many of you may choose to look at a payment plan the school offers or have other resources that you want to use, but Parent Plus loans and private student loans exist for those who wish to finance a portion or all of the remaining balance via a loan program. So the Parent Plus loan is a federal loan in the parent's name. It's based off parent credit and it is in the parent name only. So parents are responsible for repayment on this loan. Now the loan has options about whether parents start repayment while the student's in school or if the loan payment is postponed until after graduation, but it is an unsubsidized loan, so interest will begin to accrue. And you can see here for the current academic year, that interest rate was 8.05%. This interest rate does update each May for the following academic year. Private student loans are like the Parent Plus in that they can be used to cover any of the remaining costs, but typically a private student loan is one where the student's the borrower and they have a cosigner that signs on with them. Now, with a private student loan, these are borrowed from banks and credit unions and lenders like that. So everything varies a little bit with these loans. It's a little more like if you're going to get a car loan and one lender might offer one rate and benefits and another lender might offer something different. So you can keep that in mind as you look at these loan programs. I introduced these within this presentation so you understand that there are parent loans and private student loans that exist to help fund any of the remaining balance needed for the account. Just so you can kind of understand what loans are out there to help pay for college costs, such as tuition, dorm room, meal plan, those sorts of things. Federal work study is also a type of financial aid that many of our students take advantage of. Work study is a great opportunity for students to work on campus, earn some money to help with expenses, while also getting some really good practical job experience. Typically on most campuses, work study is something the student works hourly and they earn the money via a paycheck. Typically the pay that the student earns for work study is not credited towards the tuition account. Instead, the student gets a paycheck every 2 weeks or how often they get paid. So keep this in mind as you're thinking about work study. It's a great opportunity to work on campus and gain some experience, but it probably won't apply anything directly towards that tuition account. Plus, with work study, you have to earn it and be paid as you go along. So if a tuition bill is due at the beginning of the semester, work study doesn't work well to pay for that semester. It might be money you can use for other expenses like books or to save up to help pay for the next semester. You do have to file the FAFSA to qualify for federal work study, and every campus is a little different about how they operate their program, how much they pay, so you can certainly talk to those colleges and universities that you're considering to see what opportunities they have for work study or even a broader campus employment program. What are the next steps? We've talked a lot about filing the FAFSA tonight, what to do if you have special circumstances, what those costs of college are that you need to consider, what kind of financial aid you might qualify for. So the next step after all of this is that schools, colleges, and universities will put together an award offer for any students who have been accepted to their institution. And this financial aid offer will show any scholarships, grants, loans, work opportunities that you, the student, qualify for to attend that university. Now, these award offers are sent in a variety of timelines. You might find that you start getting them as early February. It could be March or even April before you receive some, depending on the schools that you're looking at. And I always recommend you can reach out to the schools that you're considering and ask them, when do you send the full financial aid offers? I do want to note again, though, you have to have applied and been accepted to that school before they will send you a full financial aid offer. It's fine to list them on the FAFSA even if you haven't applied yet, but keep in mind you won't hear back from the school until you've submitted that admissions application and gone through those steps. Make sure you follow up with any schools you're considering. If they ask you for more documents, you want to get that submitted and make sure they have everything they need from you to create that full financial aid offer. And also follow any deadlines. I mentioned earlier that there's a FAFSA deadline often that you want to be aware of. There may also be some scholarship application deadlines and things like that that you want to follow to maximize your full financial aid offer. This is the federal website for all things federal aid related, studentaid.gov. You can link to file the FAFSA on this site. You can learn more about student loans, repayment, grants, all of that. So I do highly encourage you to take a look at this site. If you have any questions about the student loans that you want more details for, this will all be listed here as well as filing the FAFSA. So it's a good resource for all things federal aid. I really appreciate you tuning in with me today, and I hope this has been helpful for you as you start that next step of the financial aid process.